What happens when car companies forget common sense? You get the 6 dumbest cars the world has barely seen. Some looked like toasters, some couldn't climb hills, and a few were so bad they were banned entirely. This isn't just funny, it's automotive insanity. Don't miss the stupidest rides ever put on wheels.
Number 6. 1970 Subaru 360, Japan's first people's car. Small in size, big in history, the Subaru 360 was the car that put Japan on wheels. Manufacturer, Fuji Heavy Industries, Subaru Division. Model, Subaru 360. Production years, 1958 to 1971. Class, K-car, light city car, Japan-specific category. Body style, 2-door sedan, convertible, station wagon, 360 custom, layout. Rear engine, rear-wheel drive, nickname, Ladybug, Tenamushi in Japanese. By 1970, the Subaru 360 had been in production for over a decade and had become one of the most recognizable Japanese cars of its era. It was Japan's answer to the Volkswagen Beetle. Cheap, practical, reliable, and made for the masses. But compared to global standards, it was also one of the smallest and slowest road-legal cars ever sold. Feature, specification engine, 356 core cc, 0.36L, 2-stroke, 2-cylinder. Horsepower, 25 horsepower, at 5,500 RPM torque, 25 pound-feet. Transmission, 3-speed manual, later 4-speed optional, top speed, till 60 miles per hour, 95 kilometers an hour, 0 to 60 miles per hour, never, 0 to 50 miles per hour in 37 seconds. Curb weight, 385 kilograms, 849 pounds, fuel economy, 66 mpg, 3.5-liter 100 kilometers, dimensions, 2.99 meters, west 1.29 meters, has heights 1.37 meter, seating 4, barely. Suspension front, independent, trailing arm rear, independent, swing axle. Despite its tiny engine and frame, the 360 was a true 4-seater, at least in theory, and boasted real-world usability in Japanese cities. The need for a K-car post-World War II. Japan was in dire need of affordable private transportation, fuel-efficient cars, vehicles that could navigate narrow, crowded streets. The Japanese government established the K-car, Keziduda category, in 1949 to encourage small, economical vehicles. K-cars had strict limits. Max engine, 360 cc. Max length, 3 meters. Max width, 1.3 meters. The Subaru 360 was one of the first cars built specifically for this class and quickly became the default people's car in Japan, long before Honda and Toyota dominated. Exterior egg-like shape, round and soft like the Volkswagen Beetle. Rear hinge suicide doors until late models. Minimalistic bumpers, fenders integrated into the body. Available in various pastel colors, cream, blue, mint green, pink. Interior very basic, 2 rows of bench seats. No radio, standard, no glove box. Simple instrument cluster with speedometer and fuel gauge. Heater, optional. Despite its simplicity, the 360's cabin was roomier than you'd expect, thanks to clever packaging and a short dashboard. The engine was a tiny air-cooled 2-stroke twin mounted behind the rear axle. It had a very distinct monocoque chassis, rare for the time in such a small vehicle. Fiberglass roof panel helped reduce weight. Swing axle rear suspension allowed decent comfort for its size. Manual choke and oil mixing system. Early versions required you to measure oil for each fuel fill-up. Later versions, post-1967, had an automatic oil metering system to make fueling easier. A bold, flawed experiment. In 1968, Malcolm Bricklin, yes, that Bricklin of SV1 fame, began importing the Subaru 360 into the United States. He advertised it as Subaru 360, cheap and ugly, does it, and priced it at just $1,297, making it the cheapest car in America at the time. But things went wrong quickly. U.S. journalists called it unsafe and underpowered. Consumer Reports dubbed it a death trap. American freeways were too fast and aggressive for a car that topped out at 60 miles per hour. Only around 10,000 units were sold in the U.S. between 1968 and 1971, and Subaru halted imports soon after. However, this laid the foundation for Subaru's future American success. Today, it's one of the most beloved brands in the US. In 1970, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police bought a fleet of white Subaru 360s as city patrol cars. Nicknamed Kei Kisatsu, Light Police, these cars were so slow that officers had to call in backup if the suspect ran away on foot. Eventually, they were repurposed for neighborhood outreach and traffic guidance, which suited their general presence perfectly. The Subaru 360 is deeply nostalgic for Japanese citizens who grew up in the 1950s and 70s, appeared in anime, manga, and children's books, a symbol of post-war optimism and modernization, known affectionately as Tentomushi, ladybug, due to its shape and colors. Even today, Subaru uses the 360 in marketing materials as a symbol of its heritage and engineering spirit. In 1971, Japan's K-car regulations were updated to allow larger engines, up to 550 cc's. The 360 was underpowered, obsolete in design, unsafe by modern standards. Subaru replaced it with the R2, then the Rex, leading eventually to the Justy and later Global models. Condition value project, non-running, $2,000 and $4,000, good driver quality, $6,000, $10,000 concourse restored, $15,000, $25,000 ultra-rare, convertibles, police cars, up to $35,000. Subaru 360s are now rarely found outside Japan, but they're cherished by collectors of microcars. JDM Classics. Early Subaru history. The 1970 Subaru 360 wasn't fast. It wasn't luxurious, but it was affordable, reliable, efficient, easy to repair, adorably iconic. It was Japan's answer to the Model T. Simple, accessible, and everywhere. If you love underdogs, history, or microcars with massive impact, the Subaru 360 is a keystone vehicle of post. Number 5. 1957 King Midget Model 3, the all-American microcar for the masses. As small as a go-kart, as ambitious as a Cadillac, the King Midget was a car that wanted to bring motoring to everyone. Manufacturer, Midget Motors Corporation, Athens, Ohio. Model, King Midget Model 3. Production years, 1957 to 1969. Body style, two-seat convertible, roadster. Layout, rear engine, rear-wheel drive. Class, microcar/economy car. Assembly, USA. Built and shipped as both factory complete and kit forms. The King Midget was not just a car, it was a philosophy. It was designed to be the world's lowest price car that anybody could own, drive, or build. In 1957, the Model 3 introduced a more refined, practical version of the car that had begun as a DIY kit in the 1940s. The goal was still the same: basic, affordable, personal transportation for everyone. Something like a motorized American dream. The dream of democratic driving. The King Midget story begins with two World War II veterans, Claude Dry and Dale Orcutt, who wanted to design a car so simple and cheap that anyone could afford and assemble it, even those with minimal mechanical knowledge. They founded Midget Motors in 1946 in Ohio and started selling build-it-yourself cars via classified ads in Popular Mechanics, Mechanics Illustrated, and other DIY magazines. Early models used surplus World War II parts, lawnmower engines, and hand-welded frames. By 1957, they transitioned to fully assembled cars, and the Model 3 became their best-known effort. Feature specification: engine, 9.2 horsepower Kohler single-cylinder, 4-cycle. Displacement 301 cc. Transmission, 2-speed automatic, no clutch pedal. Top speed, 40 to 50 miles per hour, 65 to 80 kilometers per hour. 0 to 30 miles per hour, 10 seconds, depending on terrain. Curb weight, 550 pounds, 226 to 250 kilograms. Dimensions, L 112 inches, W 52 and H 50 inch. Fuel economy, 60 to 70 mpg. Drive rear-wheel drive. Brakes, rear mechanical drum brakes only. Body all, steel welded construction. Yes, it had no front brakes, no seat belts, and no doors by default. Optional. and yet it was fully street legal in most U.S. states at the time. Exterior, the Model 3 introduced a more squared-off and automotive-looking body than its rounded predecessors. Full steel body, a step up from earlier aluminum or hand-formed kits. Flat fenders, upright grille, simple bumpers. Optional soft top, doors, and even full enclosures. Interior bench seat, accommodated too tightly. Simple dashboard with speedometer and ignition. No heater, no radio, no frills. Controls included only throttle, brake. With only rear brakes, stopping distances were long, but in town, it was zippy, fun, and shockingly efficient. In 1957, a new King Midget Model 3 cost $895 US dollars fully assembled, or around $500, $600 as a kit. That's about $9,000 to $11,000 in today's money, far cheaper than any full-size car of the day. It was cheaper than a used Ford and more affordable than a Vespa scooter with sidecar. Target market: rural Americans, teenagers, seniors, budget-conscious families, DIY mechanics. In the late 1950s, a traveling preacher from Indiana named Reverend Carl Shepard bought a King Midget 3 kit to save on travel expenses. He drove his midget over 80,000 miles across 12 states, preaching from town to town. Locals called it the little church car. The story became so popular it was featured in Mechanics Illustrated, and he eventually helped sell over 40 midgets through his own testimonials. You could assemble a Model 3 in your garage with hand tools, the provided manual, a bit of welding, or they'd pre-weld the frame for you. This made the King Midget a precursor to the kit car boom of the 1960s and 70s, long before Myers-Manx dune buggies or Factory 5 Cobras. Surprisingly, the King Midget was road legal, licensed and registered in all but a few U.S. states. Headlights, brake lights, horn, all standard. No crash safety standards yet, so legal under early DOT laws. Many owners use them for local commuting, retirement communities, college campuses, mail routes, and light delivery. By the late 1960s, the American market was shifting. Federal safety and emissions regulations became stricter. Larger, more powerful cars were in demand. Japanese compacts like the Toyota Corolla and Honda N600 entered the market. Midget motors couldn't keep up. In 1969, the company was sold to investors who attempted to modernize the car, but the business collapsed by 1970. Total production from 1946 to 1970 is estimated at 5,000 to 6,000 cars. Condition, estimated value, US dollar, project, unrestored, $1,500, 3,000 good runner, $5,000 to $8,000, fully restored, $10,000, $15,000, rare models, police cars, USPS variants, up to $20,000 plus. They remain popular in micro car collector circles, vintage car rallies, weird and wonderful museums like Lane Motor Museum in Tennessee. Though it was never a commercial powerhouse, the King Midget left a mark on automotive culture. Ahead of its time in low-cost transportation, it blended the DIY spirit with automotive independence. It inspired future kit car builders. We showed that a car could be built, not bought. It represents a unique slice of post-war American ingenuity, the kind of thing that could only happen in a garage in Ohio. The King Midget wasn't about horsepower, it was about hope. Number 4, 1958 Zündapp Janus, Germany's back-to-front microcar marvel. A car with no front and no rear, the Zündapp Janus was a bold experiment in symmetry, simplicity, and strangeness. Manufacturer, Zündapp Work GmbH. Model, Janus production, years, 1957 to 1958. Class, microcar, Kleinwagen. Body style, two-door double-ended sedan. Layout, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive. Engine, 245cc single-cylinder, two-stroke notable feature. Front and rear opening doors. Name, origin, Janus, the Roman god of two faces. The Zündapp Janus was named after a god who could see forward and backward, a fitting moniker for a car that quite literally had doors at both ends. With its mid-mounted engine and symmetrical design, it stood out in the increasingly crowded world of European microcars, from motorcycles to microcars. Founded in 1917, Zundap was a successful German manufacturer of motorcycles, engines, and military equipment. By the 1950s, car ownership in West Germany was booming. Motorcycle makers like BMW and Heinkel feared losing customers to affordable cars like the Volkswagen Beetle or Messerschmitt KR200. In response, Zundap decided to enter the microcar market with a bold, brand-new design. They partnered with Claudius Dornier Jr. of Dornier aircraft fame, who designed a radical car, small, symmetrical, and entirely new. Feature specification: engine, 245cc single-cylinder, two-stroke, Zundap power output, 14 horsepower at 5,000 RPM, torque, 14 pound-foot, speed, 80 kilometers per hour, 50 miles per hour, transmission, 4-speed manual drive type, rear-wheel drive engine position, mid-engine, between seats, curb weight, 455 kilograms, 1,000 pounds, fuel economy, 4.0 liter per 100 kilometers, approximately 58 miles per gallon US. Seating, 4 passengers, 2 facing forward, 2 backward. Construction, welded steel body with aluminum panels. The Janus's layout was unlike anything else on the road. Mid-mounted engine gave it neutral weight distribution. Front door for the driver, rear door for rear passengers. Seats were back-to-back, like a train carriage. Exterior, completely symmetrical. From the side, you can't tell front from back. Rounded, bubble-like shape. Tiny wheels pushed out to the corners. Frameless doors at front and rear. No front trunk or rear boot. Luggage went under the seats or in small side cubbies. Interior, 4 individual seats in 2 rows facing opposite directions. Central instrument cluster. Steering wheel fixed to front door column. Minimalist controls. No heater or radio standard. Thin padding, metal floors. Very utilitarian. Despite the micro proportions, the Janus was surprisingly spacious, especially for kids or small adults. Mid-engine layout gave theoretically balanced handling. Its engine positioning led to noise and heat inside the cabin, and its rear passengers were prone to nausea from facing backward with little window visibility. The Janus was easy to park, very fuel efficient, and surprisingly stable at low speeds, but with only 14 horsepower, acceleration was leisurely at best. Hills were a challenge. Cornering was secure thanks to the low center of gravity. No spare tire. If you got a flat, you were stuck. On German country roads, it was competent. On the Autobahn, a hazard. The microcar boom. In post-war West Germany, cars were taxed and regulated based on engine size and weight. Microcars, including the BMW Isetta, Messerschmitt, Goggomobil, and Heinkel Cabine, became wildly popular. The Janus aimed to compete with all of them and outdo them with 4 real seats, better weight distribution, futuristic design. Unfortunately, it entered a crowded market already saturated with brands offering cheaper, better-known alternatives. Zundap's marketing backfire. Zundap marketed the Janus as a car for modern families, but many buyers were confused by its design. People thought it was a backwards driving car. Some assumed it was unsafe, since the front and rear doors seemed exposed. A popular joke in 1958, if the car gets confused, which way does it run? Zundap never managed to convince the public of the Janus's advantages. Dealers struggled to explain its uniqueness in practical terms. Despite heavy investment, the Janus was a commercial flop. Only around 6,902 units were ever built. Between 1957 and 58, production was halted after just 1 year. Zundap lost money and exited the car business permanently. They went back to building motorcycles until shutting down in 1984. In comparison, BMW sold over 160,000 Isettas, and even Heinkel outpaced the Janus in sales. Because of its rarity and design, the Janus has become a collector's gem. Condition estimated value US non-running project $5,000, $8,000 good driver condition, $15,000, $25,000 fully restored, $35,000, $50,000 museum-grade example, up to $70,000. Janus cars are now displayed in Eine Motor Museum, USA, Deutsches Museum für Verkehrszentrum, Germany, microcar museums across Europe. In 2016, a rare Janus was converted into a wedding car by a German enthusiast. He stretched the chassis, reupholstered the interior in white velvet, and installed champagne holders. The bride and groom entered from opposite ends of the car, meeting in the middle for a kiss, just like Janus, god of beginnings. The 1958 Zundap Janus was not a great car by conventional standards, but it was innovative, efficient, unmistakable, thoughtfully engineered, historically important. It captured the spirit of an era when automakers dared to be different and when mobility for all was a national dream, even if it meant riding backward in a 14-horsepower odd. Number 3, 1975. Bricklin SV1, Canada's safety sports car dream. Built with gull-wing doors, funded by the government, and doomed by ambition, the Bricklin SV1 is one of the most bizarre cars the 70s ever produced. Manufacturer, Bricklin Vehicle Corporation, BVC. Model SV1, Safety Vehicle 1. Production years 1974-1976. Country Canada, New Brunswick. Body style, two-door gull-wing sports coupe. Class Grand Tour sports car. Layout front engine, rear-wheel drive, designer Herb Grass, formerly of AMC AMX and Ford Mustang. The Bricklin SV1 was a radical concept. A flashy, plastic-bodied GT car that was designed around safety, featured gull-wing doors, and was built in Canada using U.S. parts. It was the brainchild of an American entrepreneur, Malcolm Bricklin, who also later imported the Subaru 360 and founded Yugo of America. The idea was to marry performance, futuristic design, and innovative safety, and sell it to the American market as a competitor to Corvette. Feature specification: engine, 351 CUS in Ford Windsor V8, 5.8 liters. Power output 175 horsepower at 4,000 RPM, torque 286 pound-ft at 2,600 RPM, transmission, 3-speed Ford C4 automatic, top speed 190 kilometers, 0-60 miles per hour 9.2 seconds, curb weight 3,570 pounds, 1,620 kilograms, chassis steel perimeter frame, body material acrylic plastic bonded to fiberglass, suspension front, independent coil spring, rear, live axle, leaf springs, brakes, power disc, front, drum rear wheels. 15-inch aluminum alloy. While its performance wasn't exceptional, it was competitive with contemporary Corvettes and Mustangs, and visually unlike anything else on the road. Gull-wing doors, electrically operated, later pneumatic. Infamous for frequent failures, especially in cold climates. Each door weighed over 100 pounds, requiring significant effort and maintenance. Safety features: integrated roll cage, massive 5 miles per hour crash bumpers, no cigarette lighter or ashtray, encouraging a healthy lifestyle, energy-absorbing bumpers and side impact beams. Exterior no paint. Panels were color-impregnated acrylic colors: safety red, safety orange, safety green, safety white, safety suntan. Aggressive stance with wedge-shaped nose and wide hips. SV1, Safety Vehicle 1. The SV1 was designed to be the sports car that could save your life. Malcolm Bricklin believed American cars were unsafe and overcomplicated. He set out to design something different. A car that looked exotic, could be mass-produced at scale, was safer than its competitors, and affordable for the average driver. Unfortunately, this dream clashed with the realities of engineering, politics, and economics. In the early 1970s, the result was a car that looked great, cost too much, had quality control issues, and was plagued by inexperienced labor, material delays, and unreliable parts. The Canadian government eventually pulled the plug after less than 3 years. Exact records are unclear. The cars were primarily sold in the U.S., especially in California and the South, where warm weather minimized door issues. Gull-wing doors, trap owner. One of the most bizarre Bricklin tales came from an owner in Nevada in 1976. After parking the SV1 outside on a hot day, both gull-wing doors refused to open due to an air pressure system failure. The driver had to kick out the rear hatch glass to escape, suffering minor injuries. The story made local news and contributed to the car's growing reputation for style over function. Though not widely known, the Bricklin has made appearances in Jay Leno's garage. He owns one and calls it beautiful but tragic. TV series like The Rockford Files, Canadian museums, as a symbol of industrial overreach. Today, it's often lumped in with the DeLorean DMC-12, another gull-wing sports car with a great idea and poor execution. Condition, value USD, project car, $5,000 to $10,000, running or good, $15,000 to $25,000, fully restored, $30,000, asset $45,000, museum grade, or their low miles $50,000. Due to its rarity and wild styling, the Bricklin is a favorite among quirky car collectors, gull-wing enthusiasts, fans of oddball 1970s engineering. Although it failed commercially, the Bricklin SV1 left a unique imprint. The only production car ever funded by a Canadian government, one of the few gull-wing cars produced in the 20th century, paved the way for Subaru's entrance into the U.S. via Bricklin, a cautionary tale of visionary ambition and practical misfire. The Bricklin didn't just try to reinvent the sports car. It tried to reinvent how we build cars, and that's why it fell apart. The 1975 Bricklin SV1 was bold, weird, and flawed, but it deserves a place in automotive history for daring to be different. Designed by rebels, funded by government dreams, doomed by reality. Today, it's one of the most collectible oddities of the 1970s, and a reminder that sometimes, even great-looking cars can be tragic heroes. If Ferrari had built this, we'd call it genius. Because Bricklin built it, we call it madness. Number 2, 1975, Bricklin SV1, Canada's gull-wing gamble. The Bricklin SV1 wasn't just a car, it was a statement. A flashy plastic, government-backed dream of safety, speed, and style. And like many dreams, it burned bright and died fast. Full name, Bricklin Safety Vehicle 1, SV1. Manufacturer, Bricklin Vehicle Corporation, BVC. Year, 1975. Second and most produced model year. Country of origin, Canada. Designer, Herb Grass. Also designed the 1970 Mustang Boss 302 concept. Professional location, St. John and Minto, New Brunswick. Total production, 1974-1976. Approximately 2,805 units, with about 2,062 in 1975. The SV1 was a bold answer to the 1970s automotive crisis, a Canadian-made sports car that tried to blend exotic design, American muscle, and modern safety features in one futuristic package. Malcolm Bricklin, an American entrepreneur, had already made waves by importing the Subaru 360 into the U.S. in the late 1960s. By the early 70s, Bricklin had a new vision: build the safest sports car in the world, one that didn't just go fast, but protected its occupants in a crash. The Canadian government of New Brunswick, desperate for jobs, agreed to fund the venture, investing over 23 million CAD into a production facility, tooling, and job creation. Category, specification, engine, Ford 351 Windsor V8, 5.8 liter. Horsepower, 175 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. Torque, 286 pound-feet at 2,600 RPM. Transmission 3-speed automatic. Ford C4 to 60 miles per hour, 9.2 seconds. Top speed, 118 miles per hour, 190 kilometers per hour curb weight. While it wasn't a Ferrari killer, it performed comparably to the C3 Corvette or Mustang II Cobra, especially in a straight line. Gull-wing doors. The car's most striking feature, power operated by air pistons, prone to failure, extremely heavy and could trap passengers if the system failed, no manual override in early models, integrated steel roll cage, energy-absorbing bumpers, side impact beams in the doors, no cigarette lighter or ashtray to discourage smoking. Body panels were color-impregnated acrylic bonded to fiberglass, no paint to chip or fade. Colors had names like Safety Red, Safety Orange, and Safety Green. The concept was undeniably innovative, but production was plagued by problems. Inconsistent build quality due to untrained labor, electrical and pneumatic issues, especially with the doors. Material mismatches caused panel warping, cracking, and color fading. Supply chain problems meant missing parts and delays. By 1975, the Ford 351 V8 replaced the 1974 AMC 360 V8 due to emissions compliance. While the Ford engine was reliable, it offered less performance. In one infamous incident, a Canadian auto journalist was trapped in a Bricklin during a demo at a dealership because both gull-wing doors failed to open due to a power issue. The staff had to remove the roof bolts to let him out. This incident made headlines and became symbolic of the car's over-engineering flaws. Despite hype and high hopes, the Bricklin couldn't survive its flaws. The car's base price ballooned from $4,000 to $9,995 USD. Funding dried up after the New Brunswick government lost confidence. Dealers struggled to sell the car. Malcolm Bricklin left the company in mid-1975. The company filed for bankruptcy in September 1975, although a few 1976 models were finished by creditors. Jay Leno's garage featured a fully restored SV1, calling it the best DeLorean alternative. Often mistaken for a DMC DeLorean, though it predates it by nearly 5 years. Collectors love its Mad Max meets Corvette vibe. Condition estimated price, USD. Project car, $5,000 to $10,000. Running condition, $15,000, $25,000 want restoreds. $35,000 or $50,000. Low mileage survivor American running to $60,000 plus information. While not ultra valuable, Bricklins have a cult following and are sought after for shows, museums, and movie builds. The only production sports car made in Canada as of 2025 D. Among the very few cars in history funded by a national government D. Paved the way for Bricklin's later ventures, Yugo Visionary Vehicles D. Part of a trio of failed dream cars alongside the DeLorean DMC-12 and Vector W8D. The SV1 is a rare example of what happens when vision and idealism clash with production and politics. The SV1 wasn't just a car. It was a belief that we could make the future safer, faster, and cooler. The 1975 Bricklin SV1 was a car that tried to do too much too fast, with too little experience. But in its short life, it managed to inspire engineers, excite dreamers, and become an enduring icon of 1970s automotive ambition. Today, it's remembered not for what it was, but for what it tried to be. A gull-wing sports car with soul, built not in Detroit or Turin, but in the forests of New Brunswick.